When I say the word capital, what do you think of? A major city, capital letter, capital crime, money? Let's talk about the 7 different forms of capital. And no, this video isn't about goldbacks. Welcome back to the RuralStacker channel. Thanks for stopping in, neighbor. The 7 forms of capital I'm talking about is specifically around the idea of the community capitals framework. It was developed by Cornelia and Jan Flora. There are plenty of other versions of this that have come out, like the 5 forms of business capital and the 8 forms of individual capital. But today we're talking strictly about the communities. If there's an interest, maybe I'll do a video on the 8 forms of individual capital. The ideas there are similar, but they're different forms that are considered. And everybody has their own take on this. That's why there's many different styles out there. But yeah, we're back on track here. Each form of the capital that we'll go over is part of a larger interconnected system, a community, if you will. They rarely function on their own, but they really flow into and kind of transform into one another to drive the community wealth. One is not necessarily more valuable than the other, but there are arguments to be made to try and rank them or reorder them or put them in an order. Remember that they're all working together, so there might be some overlap or ones where you could kind of lump together, if you will, and that's why everybody has their own take on this. But the idea still remains true that it's more than just money or currency for it to be considered capital. And first, we need to define capital for this discussion. I don't have an old dictionary like Ordinary Man, although I would really be interested to see what his says the definition of capital is. But since I don't have that, I have the Merriam-Webster definition that we will use, and it is relating to or being assets that add to the long-term net worth of a corporation. And I think that'll work in our scenario because a community, similar, can be a corporation. Isn't the United States a corporation? We won't go down that rabbit hole today, but there's our definition. And really, if we wanted to, we could break it down even a little bit more simpler and say it's anything that has value, if you want. So you can define an asset, you can define value on your own, but we'll leave that open for interpretation. So let's get into this jammy style. My terrible handwriting and everything. So 7 forms of capital, right? The first one here is natural capital. It's the foundation for other forms. It's raw materials and ecosystems that are found in the community. So examples are clean water, minerals, timber, soil. It could also be the weather, location. Its main focus is on the environment, and its goal there is for resource preservation and health. The second one is cultural capital. It's the way that people see the world and how they react and act to it. Examples of this are language, traditions, folk tales, shared values, things like that. Their focus is on heritage, and the goal is to maintain an identity and a worldview. The next one here is human capital, right? This is skills, talents, health, knowledge, person's ability to contribute to the community. You have education, strategic thinking, vocational skills, specialization. Those are all forms of human capital. Focus is on the individual, and the goal is to enhance the skills and the well-being of the individual. The next one is social capital. It's a glue that holds it all together. Really, it's the relationships, networks, hierarchies. You think of your family, friends, neighbors, chain of command, authority, trust is in social capital, right? And the focus is on connections, and the goal is to build trust in networks. Number 5, Political capital, it's the ability to influence, seat at the table, if you will. This is voting power, lobbying efforts, government is political capital. Its main focus is on persuasion and influence, and you can gain access to the power and the resources is the goal for that one. Financial capital, it's the most familiar. There's not really an explanation needed for that. It's savings, investments, grants, taxes, metals, credit, if you even is in there. Again, a lot of these can tie back in, like credit. I would kind of also lump in, kind of overlaps with social credit capital because there's some trust needed there. So a lot of these are overlapping. It's not set in stone per se. It's fungible, if you will, right? All money's fungible. Focus on this. Financial capital is money, though, and its goal is to facilitate trade and investments. And the last one is built capital. It's human-made infrastructure that supports the other capital. You can think of roads, the grid, machinery, buildings, water treatment facilities, parks even, although again that kind of ties into natural, so overlap, but I think you're getting the idea. Its main focus is on infrastructure, and the goal is to provide physical support systems. And okay, so now that you know these, what do you do with them, right? And the idea is that you can accrue these different forms of capital or wealth or value, right? Example is your toilet's leaking, right? The human capital of a plumber is very high in that. The value of that plumber is very high in that scenario, right? Or if you don't have clean drinking water, right? You got natural capital, or even the well or water distribution, right? Built capital. It becomes very valuable in that certain scenario. Social capital, right? It's never happened to me, but guys in the community, think of Littlefoot, Southeast, they get medals before they pay for them, right? From their local coin shops. That's a form of social capital. Another form of social capital is, you have that friend that you would do anything for, or that friend would do anything for you for. Well, you're not exchanging money whenever you say that, right? So you're talking about social capital in that scenario. And these are ways to become more and more wealthy, right, in other aspects of your life when outside of just, money. So they could be used for good and evil, obviously, but this is what a community is built on, and this is different ways to measure the wealth of a community. So we'll jump into, different examples of each one of these, around an individual, a community, and a business, just to kind of drive this home a little bit more. All right, so an individual, it could be a private garden, their property, if they have a hiking trail on there, or like I said earlier, clean well, or a spring on their property. They could have property that you could deer hunt on, right? So that's an individual's natural capital. Community, we said about the parks. You could have a river running through your community that you could use for transportation or recreation, right? You need some built capital like docks and everything for the transportation, but you could have a really good area, good soil for farming. You could have negative thing. You could be next to a coal mill that's burning off and polluting the air, right? So there's positives and negatives here that you could use. A business, right? You could have mineral rights. You could have solar farm. You could have standing timber, right, that you can cut down and sell. Those are a couple examples. Cultural capital, we'll move on to. Again, these are the heritage, your traditions, your shared worldviews. For an individual, it's kind of like the way we do things, as a group. And I'm sure you could think of a lot of cultures that had a lot of influence, right? that have been good and bad for society. But for an individual, right, they could speak multiple languages, right, because that's part of it. They could have a knowledge of a family recipe, or the idea of hard work, working hard. That's kind of a shared value, right? That would fall in here. The community example, you got town festivals, historic landmarks. I think of St. Louis or Missouri, the Show Me State, right? That's kind of a cultural thing. Businesses, you can have a business culture that's really good, that prioritizes innovation. They have a brand name like the Nike symbol, right, or McDonald's symbol. You see that, everybody knows what you're talking about. It could also, social capitals could be a negative thing here or cultural capitals, I'm sorry, could be a negative thing as like rituals. Those would fall under cultural capital. More like groupthink, right? That's cultural capital. But strength in numbers, right? And our tribe mentality, right? These are all things that are valuable to an extent. So that would fall under number 2, cultural capital. Go to the next, human capital. Kind of talked on it with the plumbers. You could have college degrees, coding skills. You could have somebody that's really physically fit, good public speaking skills, leadership skills. You could have somebody that I have strategic thinking, right? If you're facing conflict and somebody is very good at strategy, right? That would be in the human capital. For a community, you kind of got, the literacy rates, right? That's good. You have a diverse range of skilled workers, plumbers, doctors, lawyers, artists. You could also have, since health and well-being's kind of under human capital, right? You could have a good birth rate or a strong youth uprising, right? So that's one there. The business, human capital business, you have human or employees that are experts in their field, right? You have training programs, that's part of it. You have maybe like a research and development team. You have assemble a good team of individuals, a good marketing team, right, or marketing campaign. That's all under here, as well as proprietary information would fall under that, like patents and things like that. Or another one would be the different seasonings in your chicken, right? That would all fall under human capital. Social capital, individual. At the individual level is a reliable group of friends. You have a professional mentor. You have a good name in the community. I think of like when I was in the military, right? That tight knit bond that I had with my fellow brothers in arms. That would be social capital. The community. I mean, you could go a lot of different ways here. You got like the neighborhood watch is a social group. You have Rotary clubs, coin clubs, and the level of trust that neighbors have with one each other. That's a form of social capital in a community setting. Business setting, you have you see it all the time with strategic partnerships, right? Or a loyal customer base. Or strong ties to the industry regulators, and again, that kind of can be lumped into political capital, but still technically a social capital because it's based on a relationship. The next one, political capital, you have at the individual level, right? You could hold a seat on the local school board or city council or local government, something like that. Could be the local dog catcher, if you will. In the community, this one kind of gets a little bit more blurry, but a high voter turnout for a particular party would have high political capital. If you get a group of your neighbors to go to the community planning meeting and say they want to build a highway through your town, and you all band together and basically lobby without giving funds for them to stop that highway, or a data center, right, would be a good example, or organized advocacy groups, right? Those are all different ways of a community political capital. And business political capital is really mainly about the lobbying. They can control what laws are drafted for them. They could also make donations to political parties to influence different elections and results of laws being passed, and even so much so as to kind of take as a business, force their human capital through financial capital and cultural capital to vote one way or another, right? See how they're all kind of tying together. Financial capital, obviously at the individual level, you have your savings accounts, stocks, bonds, personal lines of credit, precious metals. That's pretty self-explanatory. But at a community level, you have the local taxes, municipal bonds. You can get state, local grants, things like that. Business level, you got angel investing, venture capital funding, cash flow. You have property assets if you're a real estate company. You have equipment assets, which again kind of go into built capital, but not so much if you use them for line of credits, things like that. You can use for expansion. On the built capital, individual, right? Your home, your house, your cell phone, your shed full of tools, things like that. That's built man-made infrastructure that would support you. Community, we talked about the roads, high-speed internet, water, sewage, public libraries, police departments, fire departments. Those are all kind of built capital for your community. Business, manufacturing plant, you got a whole fleet of delivery trucks. You have software systems. You have inventory would be another built capital kind of thing. And you can see how a lot of these interact and some of them overlap. Social capital and cultural capital can kind of be overlapped. Same with political. You use financial capital to maybe get natural capital or spend financial capital to increase your human capital. And they're all just different forms of value, but they all interact together. And you might not have a lot of financial means, but there's nothing stopping you from building that human capital and cultural capital, right? Be that friend that anybody will do something for you no matter what, right? And you don't have to give them or pay them or bribe them or do something in return. You could spend your human capital for that favor, right? You also hear about somebody who's living a nice, peaceful life on their little cabin in the woods, like I do, right? I have a high natural capital because of the resources around me, but I don't have a lot of built capital if I'm off grid and living in a cave. So there's different ways to value these. Like I said at the beginning, there's no real meaning that one is higher than another. You think of, financial capital might be the most important. Okay, look at Bill Gates, right? Tons of money, nobody likes him, right? No social capital, no human agricultural capital. Is that worth it? I don't know. So ideally, you're increasing all of these where you can. I think with myself living in a tiny house in the middle of the woods, if a tornado comes, somebody who has a basement is a lot more valuable than my tiny house, right? And my trees around me. So that would be an example of built capital being of more value than the other ones. Certain times, we talked about the plumber, human capital being higher there. So it's not to say that one is more important than the other. They're all important. I don't want to say equally, because I don't think they're all equally important, but they all are valuable at certain times. And if you're not working on building all of them, or if you're focused too heavily on one, I think you might possibly be missing something. So let me know down below how many typos or spelling errors you've seen. Let me know what you thought. If you want to rank them, try to rank them. Which ones are you excelling at? Which ones are you falling behind on? Did you even ever think of the different forms? I mean, really actually think about it, right? Almost everybody's experienced social capital before. Like I said, doing a favor for somebody or getting a gift in return without just a gift and not asking for it or having any reason behind it. That's a form of social capital. Did you think of that as a form of currency or social or value? Something that you could call upon. So yeah, let me know down below. Appreciate you hanging out. I know this was a long one and a different one, but I find stuff like this interesting. And if you want to see a video on the more individualized 8 forms of capital for a person, and they're not the same, although they're similar, but they're not exactly like this, because how does a individual have built capital? You can explain that one to me, but let me know and maybe we'll do that. I appreciate you all. Have a great day. I now have a P.O. Box, and you can write me at RuralStacker, P.O. Box 107, East Brady, PA 16028 0107. I'll be looking forward to see what you got. Until next time, keep on stacking and have a great day. Please like and subscribe and share this video out to somebody who might find it interesting. I appreciate you.